The Council of the Cosmos. The Great Hall of the Galactic Republic was abuzz with energy. Representatives of thousands of species gathered under its colossal dome, their voices blending into a hum of alien languages and tones. The air shimmered with holographic projections, each representing a distinct planetary civilization. The meeting was historic. Another species was about to be introduced to the Republic, a routine yet monumental occasion. The Republic Council had seen countless presentations over the millennia. Each species followed a predictable arc: the discovery of fire, the cultivation of crops, industrialization, and eventual unity under a single planetary government. The majority of these species came from temperate, stable worlds, peaceful places that allowed their inhabitants to thrive in relative safety. These planets were the cradle of intellectual pacifists, who now dominated the galactic political landscape. High Chancellor Veran of the Oneth, a willowy figure with translucent skin that glowed faintly, tapped the floor with her ceremonial staff. The hall fell silent as the audience directed their attention toward the central podium, a floating dais illuminated by ethereal light. "We gather today," Veran began in her melodic tone, "to welcome the newest species to our Grand Republic. The Harven, a race of scholars from the peaceful world of Illinar, have achieved the great milestone of interstellar travel. Let us celebrate their entry into our collective civilization." A wave of polite applause rippled through the hall as the Harven representative stepped forward. The Harven were frail, with elongated limbs and pale blue skin that seemed almost translucent. Their ambassador began recounting their species' history, a tale of ingenuity, resilience, and peace. But as the presentation continued, subtle signs of boredom crept into the crowd. This was, after all, a story they had heard countless times before. The mysterious transmission. As the Harven ambassador concluded, Veran stepped forward again, her expression unreadable. "While we celebrate the inclusion of the Harven, our scientific division has brought a matter of urgency to the Council's attention. A signal has been detected, an anomaly originating from an unexplored sector of the galaxy." A murmur swept through the hall. The Republic, vast as it was, rarely encountered anything truly surprising. The idea of an unknown entity was both thrilling and unsettling. Veran continued, "This signal does not match the communication patterns of any known civilization. Preliminary analysis suggests it comes from a planet classified as a Deathworld." The term hung in the air like a specter. Deathworlds were planets with extreme environments, places where life struggled against the odds to survive. Their inhabitants, if they existed at all, were usually too primitive or too consumed by survival to develop advanced technology. The holographic map of the galaxy expanded, pinpointing the source of the signal. The planet, Veran announced, is called Earth. Unease among the council. The mention of Earth sparked an uneasy stir among the delegates. Deathworlds were a curiosity, studied from a distance, but rarely engaged with directly. The notion that a Deathworld could produce intelligent life, let alone a species capable of interstellar communication, was nearly unthinkable. One of the representatives, a stocky, armored being from the Arkner system, leaned forward. "What do we know of this Earth? Its atmospheric composition, its inhabitants?" A hologram of Earth appeared, spinning slowly. "Earth is classified as a Class 7 Deathworld," Veran explained. "Its gravity is higher than most habitable planets. Its biosphere is both diverse and highly dangerous, with apex predators capable of overpowering most sentient beings. Its weather patterns are volatile, and its tectonic activity poses constant threats. Yet, somehow, a species calling themselves humans has thrived there." The hall erupted into incredulous whispers. "Humans thrived on a Class 7 Deathworld." One delegate scoffed. "Impossible. Their survival must be a fluke." Veran raised her hand for silence. "We have only fragments of data, but we know this much. The humans have developed a unique resilience and adaptability." Their message contained mathematical proofs, suggesting advanced intelligence, and an invitation for contact. They are aware of us. The mission. The Council deliberated for hours, debating the merits and risks of engaging with a Deathworld species. Some argued that humanity could be a threat, a force of chaos in their orderly republic. Others saw an opportunity to study an unprecedented case of evolution and survival. In the end, a decision was reached. A diplomatic envoy would be sent to Earth, consisting of representatives from various species. The mission's purpose: to assess humanity's potential as allies or threats. As the session concluded, Varen gazed at the hologram of Earth. There was a spark of something in her usually serene expression. Curiosity, perhaps, or a glimmer of unease. If these humans are as extraordinary as their circumstances suggest, she murmured, then we may be on the brink of a discovery that changes everything. The envoy departs. The envoy's ship, the Lumine, was the pinnacle of the Republic's technology. Its sleek, shimmering form cut through the void of space, heading toward Earth. On board, a diverse crew prepared for their mission. Among them was Professor Cal Drin, a xenobiologist from the aquatic world of Peleos, and Commander Theric, a grizzled warrior from the Arkner system. Cal studied the limited data on humans with growing fascination. Their immune systems are incredibly robust, he remarked, his voice bubbling through his water-filled breathing apparatus. They survive infections and injuries that would be fatal to most species. Theric grunted. Resilience doesn't equate to intelligence. They could be nothing more than clever beasts. Cal frowned but said nothing. He couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's story would be far more complex than anyone anticipated. Arrival at Earth. As the Lumine entered Earth's orbit, the crew was met with a breathtaking view of the blue planet. Vast oceans shimmered under the light of its star, while green and brown landmasses sprawled like intricate mosaics. Swirling clouds completed the picture, lending the planet an almost serene beauty, an ironic contrast to its deadly reputation. Signal received, the communications officer announced. It's an invitation to land. The crew exchanged wary glances. Theric gripped the hilt of his ceremonial blade. Prepare for anything, he growled. As the Lumine descended, Cal's heart raced with anticipation. What kind of beings would they encounter? Were humans the monsters the galaxy feared, or something far more remarkable? The ship touched down in a vast, open plain. As the hatch opened, the crew was greeted by a delegation of humans. They were unlike anything the crew had imagined, neither monstrous nor meek. Instead, they exuded a strange combination of strength and warmth. One human stepped forward, a woman with piercing eyes and a calm demeanor. She extended a hand in greeting, a universal gesture of peace. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice steady. "We've been waiting for you." First contact. A fragile handshake. The atmosphere aboard the Lumine grew tense as the hatch slowly descended, revealing Earth's vibrant landscape. The alien delegation, accustomed to sterile halls and artificial environments, found themselves face to face with the raw, untamed beauty of a Deathworld. Towering trees swayed in the breeze, and the distant hum of unknown creatures echoed through the air. It was unsettling, yet undeniably mesmerizing. Professor Cal Drin stepped forward first, his aquatic exosuit gleaming under the Earth's sun. His gills flared slightly, filtering the planet's unfamiliar air as his large, reflective eyes scanned the terrain. Behind him, Commander Theric stood rigid, hand resting on the hilt of his ceremonial blade. The Arknarians' armored scales rippled with tension. The human delegation approached with deliberate steps. They were not what the crew expected. No weapons in hand, no signs of fear. The humans' expressions reflected a mixture of curiosity and confidence, as though they had long anticipated this encounter. A tall human woman, flanked by two others, stepped forward. Her dark hair was tied back, and her uniform, simple yet elegant, suggested a form of military or governmental authority. She extended her hand. "I'm Commander Elena Voss," she said, her voice carrying across the clearing. On behalf of the United Terran Alliance, welcome to Earth. The delegation hesitated. The gesture, so simple, yet so alien, momentarily confounded them. Kale, after a brief pause, extended his webbed appendage, gently clasping her hand. The texture of human skin was strange, coarse compared to the smooth amphibious grip of his kind. Professor Kale Drin of the Pelios Consortium, he responded, his voice translating perfectly through his neural interface. It is an honor to stand on your world. Elena smiled faintly. I imagine you've heard quite a bit about us. Commander Therak grunted, stepping forward. We've heard that Earth is dangerous, that no civilization should thrive here. His amber eyes scanned the surroundings suspiciously. I see little reason for your survival. Elena's smile didn't falter. She glanced around, inhaling deeply as if the very air bolstered her spirit. That's the thing about humans, Commander. We don't just survive. We thrive because of adversity, not despite it. Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Walking among predators, the delegation was escorted toward a large hovercraft that waited nearby. As they boarded, the crew couldn't help but marvel at the blend of advanced technology and Earth's rugged nature. Cities glistened on the horizon, yet the dense forests and sprawling plains surrounding them spoke of a world that had not been tamed, only understood. Elena led them through the capital city of New Horizon, a sprawling metropolis that seemed to pulse with life. Towering skyscrapers stood alongside preserved patches of wilderness. The streets were filled with humans of all ages, moving with purpose. Cal's eyes fixated on the towering skyline. You've built all this, he murmured, despite living in constant threat from your planet's hostile nature. Elena chuckled. Oh, the planet's threats aren't the only thing we contend with. Earth is unpredictable, but so are we. Our greatest adversaries are often ourselves. Therak frowned. A civilization at war with itself rarely survives long enough to reach the stars. Elena glanced at him. You misunderstand. Conflict, innovation, and cooperation are tightly woven into our history. Each war, each disaster, natural or man-made, has forged us stronger. Kale exchanged a glance with Therak. This wasn't the answer they expected. The Republic species evolved in harmony with their environments. Humanity, it seemed, evolved through perpetual struggle. A lesson in history. Their tour led them to the Hall of Earth's History, a sprawling archive carved into the heart of the city. Massive holographic displays flickered to life, depicting the rise of humanity from primitive beginnings to its current state. Elena gestured toward the displays. We're not the oldest species in the galaxy, nor the most technologically advanced, but we've overcome extinction more times than I can count. Pandemics, wars, climate collapse. Our history is a testament to survival through ingenuity and resilience. One display caught Cal's attention, a reenactment of humanity's leap into space after near ecological collapse. Cities drowned beneath rising oceans, deserts expanded. Yet somehow, humanity endured. What drove you to continue? Kale asked, his gaze fixated on the depiction of overcrowded refugee ships, leaving a decimated Earth. Elena's expression softened. Hope, and the stubborn belief that we could shape our destiny. No matter the odds, no matter the enemies, giving up has never been an option. Therak, arms crossed, observed silently. His warrior's heart recognized something deeply familiar in these humans. They were fighters, survivors in every sense. The apex species. As they continued their journey, the delegation observed more of Earth's wildlife, creatures of startling ferocity and elegance. Kale was captivated by a pack of wolves moving gracefully through a nature reserve, their eyes sharp and calculating. Therak scoffed. Even your fauna carries the mark of predators. Elena's eyes twinkled. That's the secret. Humanity evolved alongside predators. We had to outthink and outblast them. We didn't become the apex species by strength alone, but by strategy, cooperation, and invention. Kale tilted his head. You were prey once. For a long time, Elena replied. But not anymore. The growing unease. By the day's end, the delegation sat in one of Earth's grand halls, dining alongside human officials. The meal was a curious blend of Earth delicacies, some of which Theric refused outright. "I'll take no part in consuming flesh from a Deathworld," he muttered. Kale, on the other hand, found the offerings fascinating. "Your planet produces flavors unknown to us," he admitted, savoring a piece of fruit. Elena leaned in, her eyes serious. "I know what you're thinking," she said, voice low. "You wonder if humanity poses a threat to your republic." Kale hesitated. "Is that so far-fetched?" She met his gaze without flinching. "Maybe. But if you fear us, it's because you've only seen how dangerous we can be. What you haven't seen," she paused, "is how fiercely we protect our allies." Theric grunted but said nothing. Kale nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps Earth's greatest weapon isn't its predators," he mused. "It's humanity itself. The unseen arsenal of humanity." The halls of the United Terran Alliance's High Command were unlike anything the Republic delegation had encountered. There were no grand displays of power, no towering statues of military might, just a sleek, efficient design that radiated quiet confidence. The humans led the alien delegation down polished corridors, lined with digital panels streaming data in real time, fleet movements, scientific reports, and deep space scans. Every detail hummed with precision, as if the very infrastructure mirrored humanity's collective focus. Commander Elena Voss walked ahead, her boots clicking against the floor in rhythmic steps. Behind her, Professor Kaldrin and Commander Theric exchanged silent glances, their alien eyes absorbing every detail. "This is where your military decisions are made?" Theric finally asked, his tone skeptical. Elena smirked without turning. "Among other things, the Alliance believes in transparency. Science, defense, and diplomacy all intersect here." Cal's large aquatic eyes blinked slowly. "I expected more. Weapons." "Oh, we have weapons," Elena replied, leading them into a vast chamber that overlooked Earth from a high-altitude station. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the planet below, spinning serenely against the canvas of stars. "But our greatest arsenal isn't made of steel or plasma. It's something far less tangible." Theric's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Elena gestured toward a massive screen that flickered to life, displaying a college of human faces, scientists, soldiers, doctors, engineers, artists. "Our strength lies here," she said, tapping the screen gently. "Ingenuity. Adaptability. Every setback we endure becomes fuel for our progress. Every conflict, every disaster, we learn and we grow." Theric crossed his arms. "Adaptation is common across the galaxy. Evolution is inevitable." Elena met his gaze. "Perhaps, but few species adapt as fast and as unpredictably as we do. When faced with extinction, we invent. When outnumbered, we strategize. And when all seems lost," she trailed off, eyes narrowing slightly, "we find a way to turn even our enemies' strengths against them." Kale leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "You're speaking from experience." Elena nodded, her expression tightening. "There's a reason Earth was labeled a death world, but it's not because of the planet. It's because of us. The silent war." The screen shifted, showing fragmented footage of ancient battles, ruined cities, orbital debris, and fractured fleets. Kale watched in silence. "These wars, were they fought against yourselves?" Elena sighed. "More often than not, yes. Humanity's greatest conflicts have always been internal. But war forced innovation. Every generation built upon the lessons of the last, refining technology, strategy, and alliances. Our unity didn't come from peace. It came from the necessity of survival." Theric's eyes narrowed at the footage of towering mechanical walkers striding across scorched battlefields. "These machines, they rival Republic warships." "That was centuries ago," Elena replied nonchalantly. We don't build war machines like that anymore. Therak snorted. You outgrew them. No, she said, smiling faintly. We outgrew the need to display them. Cal's gaze shifted to a different screen, where blueprints of starships shimmered. Unlike the heavy battleships of the Arknar, human vessels were sleek and unconventional, designed less for brute force and more for versatility. What are those? Cal asked. Alina's eyes sparkled. Multipurpose fleets, built for exploration, defense, and warfare. We've learned that being prepared for all three is the key to survival in this galaxy. Therak grunted, pacing near the window. Preparedness is one thing, but how do you expect to defend yourselves if another galactic power turns hostile? Alina's voice dropped, her words calm but weighty. If that day comes, we won't need to defend ourselves. Cal frowned. And why is that? She glanced toward the planet below, her eyes reflecting Earth's glow. Because by the time they attack, we'll have already won. The fire beneath the surface, the alien delegation was escorted to the lower levels of the station, where massive hangars stretched into the distance. Hundreds of sleek starships rested in their docks, their hulls etched with markings denoting their purpose, some for combat, others for transport or scientific expeditions. Cal paused in front of a towering dreadnought, its surface unusually smooth. This is not standard Republic design. Alina stepped beside him, gazing at the colossal ship. It's not. This is the Resolute, one of our experimental defense vessels. Therak ran his clawed hand across the cold metal. Experimental. Alina smirked. You could say it's a prototype of sorts. It's capable of housing entire city populations, and it can terraform hostile worlds if necessary. Cal's eyes widened. Terraform. You build ships that can reshape planets. Not often, Alina admitted. But when your home is a Deathworld, you learn to turn hostile environments into allies. Therak stepped back, his gaze heavy with contemplation. I underestimated humanity. Alina's eyes hardened. Most do, until it's too late. A different kind of power. Later that evening, the delegation gathered for a formal dinner hosted in Earth's capital. The room buzzed with dignitaries, scientists, and military officials, all mingling in quiet conversation. Cal sipped a glass of unfamiliar liquid, tasting flavors that didn't exist on his homeworld. Your people are different than I expected, he said to Alina, seated across from him. Alina leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. How so? Cal hesitated. In the Republic, power is measured by technology, resources, and fleet size. But humanity, your strength feels less tangible, more psychological. Alina chuckled. That's because you're not looking in the right place. Our strength isn't in fleets or weapons. Therak interrupted, his deep voice rumbling. Then where is it? She pointed to the civilians around the room. Engineers, doctors, teachers, and artists. It's in them. Our people. We fight for each other, not for dominance. And that is something no enemy can fully prepare for. Cal nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. As the evening continued, Cal couldn't help but wonder, what would happen if humanity's hand was ever forced? If this peaceful facade were stripped away, what lay beneath? One thing was certain. If humanity was a sleeping giant, it would be wise for the galaxy to let it rest. The edge of diplomacy and war. The skies above Earth shimmered as the Luminae prepared to depart. Yet there was an unspoken weight hanging over the alien delegation. Diplomatic pleasantries had been exchanged, alliances hinted at, but the truth, the raw, unsettling truth, echoed louder than any treaty or agreement. Humanity was not what they had expected. In the council chambers of the United Terran Alliance, a final meeting convened. Cal Drin sat quietly, his amphibious hands folded neatly on the table, while Commander Therak remained standing, arms crossed as his sharp eyes scanned the room like a predator awaiting attack. Opposite them, Commander Alina Voss and her team observed with the same quiet intensity. There was an understanding in her gaze, a mutual recognition that stretched beyond words. This meeting, Elena began, tapping the holoconsole, marks the formal conclusion of Earth's first diplomatic encounter with the Galactic Republic. I hope it was enlightening. Kale shifted in his seat, his large eyes narrowing slightly. It was more than enlightening, Commander Voss, but I can't shake the feeling that we've only scratched the surface. Elena offered a small, knowing smile. You'd be right. Thurok, impatience burning in his voice, stepped forward. Let's speak plainly, Voss. What are you hiding? Your planet is a Deathworld, and yet you stand before us without fear. No species thrives on a Class 7 Deathworld without paying a price. What aren't you telling us? Elena's smile faded, replaced by something harder, calculated. She met Thurok's gaze without hesitation. We're not hiding anything, Commander Thurok. We've shown you the cities, the people, even the military infrastructure. But if you want to know the cost of our survival, you're asking the wrong question. Kale leaned forward. And what question should we be asking? Elena's eyes flickered toward the large window overlooking Earth's surface. The planet turned gently below them, serene and blue, masking the fires that had forged humanity into what it was. You should be asking what happens when we're forced to fight. The abyss that stares back. A long silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of machinery around them. Kale's curiosity swirled like a storm. Are you saying humanity is more dangerous than we realize? Kale pressed, his tone cautious. Elena shook her head slowly. I'm saying humanity is only dangerous when it needs to be. Thurok narrowed his amber eyes. And if the Republic one day stands against you? Elena's gaze sharpened, but her expression remained calm. If that day ever comes, I imagine we'll both regret it. Kale frowned, trying to decipher her carefully chosen words. It wasn't arrogance he sensed. It was confidence grounded in something deeper, something he couldn't quite grasp. Elena stood, gesturing for them to follow. There's one more thing I'd like to show you before you leave. Consider it a parting gift of understanding. The delegation exchanged wary glances, but followed her into the lower levels of the station. The Vault of Forgotten Wars. They descended into a hangar-like chamber that stretched far into the distance. The walls were lined with stasis fields, each containing something that glinted faintly in the dim light. Kale's eyes widened as he stepped closer. Weapons. Not ordinary weapons, but relics of ancient wars, each one a monument to humanity's most violent chapters. This, Elena said, her voice echoing softly in the vast space, is the Vault of Forgotten Wars. Thurok's fingers brushed against the stasis field surrounding a massive, spiked construct. What is this? He asked. Elena crossed her arms. That's an orbital bombardment drone from the Second Lunar Conflict, designed to pierce planetary shields and detonate underground. We don't build those anymore. Kale gazed at another, a sleek, blade-like starship that looked barely large enough for a crew of 5. And this? Stealth corvette. Elena replied. From the Martian Rebellion. It was capable of infiltrating enemy fleets undetected. Thurok's scowl deepened. Why preserve these things? Elena exhaled quietly. Because forgetting history is dangerous. These weapons exist as reminders, not of what we were forced to create, but of what we choose to leave behind. Kale's gaze lingered on the rows of deadly artifacts. And yet you keep them here. Just in case. Elena's voice hardened slightly. Just in case. A cold calculus. As they left the vault, Thurok turned to Elena, his expression unreadable. You speak of peace, yet walk in the shadows of war. Elena met his gaze firmly. We walk in those shadows because we know the cost of letting them consume us. Kale, thoughtful as ever, offered a different perspective. Perhaps that is what makes humanity unique. You found a balance the Republic struggles to understand. Elena's expression softened, if only slightly. Balance is hard-won and fragile. As they returned to the docking bay, Elena paused before the airlock to address them one final time. I hope, she said, glancing between Kale and Theric, that the Republic will see us as allies. But understand this, humanity has endured extinction-level threats before. If we're pushed into a corner, we won't hesitate to fight. And history has shown. She trailed off, her gaze locking with Theric's. We tend to win. Theric's respect for the human commander grew in that moment, though he'd never admit it aloud. Kale offered a slight bow. You've given us much to consider, Commander Voss. This alliance, should it form, will not be taken lightly. Alina smiled faintly. I wouldn't expect it to. As the Luminae lifted off, Kale gazed down at Earth one last time. Theric stood beside him, arms crossed. They're dangerous, Kale. Yes, Kale agreed. But perhaps that's exactly what the Republic needs. The call of allies and enemies. The Luminae drifted silently through the velvet blackness of space, Earth growing smaller by the second as the diplomatic vessel ascended beyond the blue planet's atmosphere. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, but for the crew aboard the alien vessel, the weight of what they had witnessed lingered heavily in the air. Kaldrin stood at the observation deck, his amphibious eyes fixated on Earth's glow. The planet's beauty was undeniable, but its serene facade concealed a dangerous truth, one that the Republic's leaders could not afford to ignore. Behind him, Commander Theric's heavy footsteps echoed through the chamber. He approached Kale with arms crossed, his hardened features cast in shadows. You still trust them, Theric said gruffly. Kale didn't turn. I trust what I saw, and what I saw was a species that defied every expectation we had. Theric's amber eyes narrowed, defied or threatened. I've seen enough to know when a warrior hides their blade. Humanity keeps theirs sheathed, but it's razor-sharp beneath the surface. Kale finally turned to face him. You're not wrong, Theric, but isn't that what makes them valuable? They've survived everything their world has thrown at them. Imagine what they could teach us. Theric's mandibles twitched in frustration. Or imagine what they could do if one day they turned that resilience against us. Kal's gaze drifted back to Earth, the planet now no more than a distant sapphire in the void. Maybe. But I think they'd rather stand with us than against us. Theric's claws tapped lightly against the metal railing. I hope, for the Republic's sake, you're right. The Republic's crossroads. The return to the Galactic Republic's core world was met with fanfare as dignitaries and analysts awaited the Luminae's arrival. Rumors of humanity's existence had spread through the highest echelons of power, sparking debates about Earth's potential as either an ally or a dangerous wild card. In the Grand Chamber of the Republic Council, Kale and Theric presented their findings. A massive hologram of Earth floated above the room as their reports concluded. The council members, representatives of dozens of species, listened in uneasy silence. High Chancellor Varan, her pale skin glowing under the chamber lights, finally broke the silence. You are certain of this? She asked, her tone cautious. Kale nodded. I stood on their soil, Chancellor. I saw their people, their cities. Humanity has forged a society unlike any we've encountered. One of the counselors, an elder of the frail Xendari species, leaned forward with concern. They thrive on a Deathworld, on a planet that should have crushed them. How can we trust them not to disrupt the delicate balance we've maintained? Theric's voice rumbled through the chamber. Because they know balance better than most. They've lived on the brink of extinction for centuries and survived. They don't seek war, but if war finds them, they'll fight until nothing stands against them. The council murmured uneasily, but Kale raised a hand. Chancellor, he said carefully, Earth may be dangerous, but they are not reckless. They value alliances, and I believe their greatest desire is peace. We could learn much from them. Varan's gaze lingered on the hologram of Earth, but will peace hold when the galaxy tests their strength? Kale hesitated, knowing that was a question no one, not even the humans, could answer with certainty. The shadows stir. Unbeknownst to the council, eyes beyond the Republic's borders were already fixed on Earth. In the cold depths of space, fleets of another galactic power, the Dravari Dominion, listened closely to the Republic's transmission frequencies. The Dravari, a warlike race known for expansion through subjugation, had long viewed the Republic's soft diplomacy with disdain. They thrived in conquest, and the idea of a new species capable of thriving on a Deathworld piqued their interest in the worst possible way. On the bridge of the Dagger of Twilight, Supreme Commander Korak watched as intercepted footage from Earth played across his display. Human vessels rising from the atmosphere, sleek and unconventional. Resilient, Korak mused aloud, his clawed hands resting on the arm of his throne. Perhaps too resilient. A subordinate, armored in traditional Dravari combat gear, approached. "Shall we prepare a fleet to assess them directly, my lord?" Korak's eyes gleamed with predatory anticipation. "Not yet. Let the Republic extend its hand first. If these humans truly stand as strong as their reputation suggests, we will find out soon enough." Invitation to the stars. Weeks passed, and the Republic finally extended an invitation to humanity to officially join their interstellar alliance. It was an unprecedented offer, extended faster than any species before them. The Republic's cautious optimism prevailed, and the Luminae returned to Earth with the formal proposal. In the heart of New Horizon, the diplomatic chamber brimmed with both human and alien representatives. Elena Voss, now a leading figure in Earth's diplomatic corps, stood before the Republic's delegation. Kel Drin delivered the invitation personally, his voice echoing through the chamber. The Republic welcomes Earth to stand among the stars, not as an outlier or anomaly, but as an equal. Elena accepted the datapad containing the formal treaty, her expression unreadable. She glanced at Kel, a glimmer of gratitude in her eyes. "We accept," she said, her voice steady. "But know this, Earth's loyalty is not given freely. We stand by our allies, but we will never be pawns in another's war." Kel smiled faintly. "I wouldn't expect anything less." The first threat. As Earth's flag rose among the symbols of the Republic, hidden dangers loomed just beyond sight. The Dravari Dominion's fleets began gathering along the Republic's borders, probing and testing defenses. In the quiet corners of space, the first seeds of conflict were sown. Yet humanity did not tremble. For the first time in galactic history, the Republic's greatest hope was not its oldest allies or most advanced fleets. It was the unrelenting spirit of a species forged in fire. And as the stars burned bright above Earth, the galaxy would soon learn that Deathworlders never yield. They endure. The gathering storm. The Republic's acceptance of Earth into its fold rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. To many within the Senate, humanity's induction was a calculated risk, a gamble that their resilience would bolster the Republic's strength. But beyond the Republic's borders, in the cold shadows where conquest and dominance reigned supreme, others viewed Earth's ascendance as a provocation. The Dravari Dominion, the largest and most militaristic power outside the Republic, interpreted humanity's rise not as a diplomatic achievement but as a challenge. And the Dravari did not tolerate challenges. In the bleak vastness of deep space, the Dagger of Twilight, Korak's flagship, drifted silently among its gathered armada. Hundreds of warships, sleek, jagged, and predatory, stood ready, their hulls reflecting the faint light of a distant star. Korak watched a holographic projection of Earth, his clawed hand slowly tapping the armrest of his throne. The intercepted transmission of humanity's acceptance into the Republic had been analyzed endlessly, yet no weaknesses had revealed themselves. "Fascinating," Korak muttered to his second-in-command, General Vorak, who loomed nearby. "A Deathworld species, one that thrives despite nature's constant attempts to destroy them." Vorak's mandibles clicked as he observed the display. "They are unexpected, but can they truly stand against the might of the Dominion?" Korak's grin was cold. "That is what we will find out." With a flick of his claw, Korak shifted the projection to display the Republic's border regions, unprotected systems that could easily fall to the Draveri if war erupted. Begin deploying reconnaissance fleets near Republic-controlled space, Korek ordered. But stay hidden. Let them believe the border is secure. And what of Earth? Vorak asked. Korek's gaze narrowed. We will not strike Earth directly. Not yet. Let's see how their Republic allies react to pressure. If they crumble, Earth will fall without a shot fired. Diplomatic tensions rise. Back on Earth, Commander Elena Voss monitored reports from the Republic's outer colonies. Trade routes were being disrupted, and communications from outposts near Draveri-controlled space had ceased abruptly. Sitting in the heart of New Horizons Command Center, Elena's eyes flickered across the holographic maps that highlighted the growing unrest. Kale Drin, now Earth's formal Republic liaison, stood nearby, concern etched across his features. It's them, isn't it? Kale asked, his voice quiet. Elena nodded. The Draveri. They're testing the Republic's resolve. Thurok, standing at the far end of the room with his arms crossed, grunted in agreement. They sense weakness. It's what they do. And if the Republic shows even a hint of hesitation, war will be inevitable. Kale sighed. The Republic hasn't fought a large-scale war in centuries. They're not ready for this. Elena leaned back, folding her arms across her chest. Maybe not, but we are. Kale arched an eyebrow. Are you proposing Earth leads the charge against the Dominion? No, Elena replied. I'm saying we prepare for the day when the Republic realizes it can't fight alone. Earth's secret projects. As diplomatic efforts continued to de-escalate tensions, Earth's leadership quietly initiated a series of covert military projects, mobilizing defense fleets, enhancing orbital platforms, and accelerating the production of advanced stealth vessels. In the depths of Earth's shipyards, a new fleet was under construction. The Aegis Initiative. These ships weren't the hulking behemoths typical of Republic or Draveri design. They were sleek, versatile, and capable of adapting mid-battle. Engineered by the brightest minds on Earth, they carried weapons powered by the same ingenuity that had driven humanity's survival for centuries. Elena stood in one of the observation bays overlooking the massive dry docks. The keystone of the Aegis fleet, a dreadnought named Vanguard, was nearing completion. Kale joined her, his eyes widening at the sight. I didn't know Earth had the resources for this scale of construction. We don't, Elena replied. But we learned to make do with less a long time ago. This is the result of efficiency and desperation. Kale studied the vessel. What makes this fleet different from the Republic's? Elena's eyes glimmered faintly. They're not built to overpower the Draveri. They're built to outsmart them. The spark of conflict. A month later, the spark that many feared finally ignited. A Republic trade convoy, escorted by light patrol ships, disappeared near the Draveri border. Debris fields were discovered, but no survivors. The Draveri denied involvement, but the evidence told a different story. Fragments of Draveri warheads embedded in the wreckage. The Republic Senate convened immediately, and despite the hesitation of many council members, it was clear that the Draveri sought conflict. Elena received the message on Earth's encrypted diplomatic channel. Kale, who had been monitoring the situation closely, stood behind her as she read the briefing. They'll try to negotiate first, Kale said softly. They always do. Elena's gaze hardened. And when that fails, they'll call us. Thurok stepped into the room, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the console. Then we'd better make sure we're ready. The unveiling of Earth's arsenal. Weeks passed, and diplomatic channels collapsed. The Republic's fleets scrambled to defend the border, but it became evident that their forces were spread too thin. Finally, a formal request arrived. Earth was being asked to deploy its fleets to reinforce the Republic's vulnerable systems. In a broadcast to the entire Republic, Elena Voss addressed the Galactic community. She stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, the flagship of Earth's new fleet, as the stars stretched out behind her. This is not humanity's first test, Elena began, her voice resolute. For centuries, we've faced threats that sought to end us. We have never backed down. And today, we stand with the Republic, not because we seek war, but because we refuse to let tyranny extinguish hope. As her speech ended, the Vanguard and the rest of the Aegis fleet emerged from Earth's orbit, their sleek forms gliding through space toward the Republic's embattled border. For the first time in centuries, the Republic did not stand alone. Humanity, the species that had endured and thrived on a Deathworld, was stepping onto the galactic stage not as a pawn, but as a force destined to change the course of history. The battle for the Republic. The Republic's border systems burned. Treveri war fleets, sleek and merciless, had swept through the outer colonies like a tidal wave, overwhelming defenses with brutal efficiency. Station after station fell in their path, leaving shattered debris drifting in the cold vacuum of space. But as the Dominion pressed further, they encountered something they had not expected: resistance unlike any the galaxy had seen before. From the depths of space, Earth's fleet emerged. The Vanguard led the charge, flanked by hundreds of smaller vessels. Unlike the Republic's monolithic ships or the Treveri's jagged warships, humanity's vessels flowed like shadows across the void. Adaptive hulls shifted their composition, and weapon ports seamlessly reconfigured based on incoming data. Commander Elena Voss stood at the bridge of the Vanguard, her eyes locked on the looming Treveri fleet ahead. Beside her, Kel Drin monitored incoming signals while Theric adjusted the serrated combat plating that adorned his chest. The Vanguard's sleek hull hummed with the pulse of newly developed weaponry, technology reverse-engineered from Earth's ancient wars. Humanity had taken the best of its turbulent history and forged it into something new, a fleet that could dance with death and come out stronger. Treveri fleet advancing, Kel reported, his aquatic eyes narrowing at the tactical display. 70 vessels. Their lead ship is transmitting warnings. Belina smirked. They don't think we'll fight back. They see humanity as expendable, Theric growled. A Republic lapdog thrown at their feet. Belina's gaze darkened. Then let's teach them what happens when you corner the wrong species. She turned to her crew. Activate the Aegis protocol. Lights dimmed across the ship as Earth's fleet shifted into combat formation. First strike. The Treveri opened fire first. Bright lances of plasma carved through space, targeting the advancing human vessels. The Vanguard twisted in mid-flight, its hull dispersing energy like ripples across water. Smaller frigates darted around the plasma bolts, closing the distance with uncanny precision. Launch interceptor swarms, Elena commanded. From the underbelly of the Vanguard, swarms of autonomous drones streamed out like a torrent, spiraling through the enemy ranks. These weren't simple machines. They adapted mid-flight, responding to the heat signatures of Treveri engines and striking at weak points along their hulls. Explosions rippled through the enemy fleet as the interceptors tore into them. They weren't ready for us, Theric muttered, satisfaction glinting in his eyes. Kale nodded, watching as Earth's vessels danced among the larger Treveri warships. Their strategy is rigid. Ours isn't. Elena's voice cut through the bridge. That's humanity's advantage. We changed the game. The Treveri counterattack. But the Dominion was not without its own arsenal. From the depths of the Treveri formation, 3 Dreadnought-class vessels emerged, their hulls lined with weapon batteries that glowed menacingly. They're preparing a broadside barrage, Kale warned. Elena's eyes narrowed. I see it. The Vanguard surged forward, flanked by 2 smaller corvettes. As the Treveri dreadnoughts unleashed their barrage, the human ships spiraled away, narrowly avoiding annihilation. Return fire, Elena ordered. The Vanguard's forward cannons ignited, releasing a concussive blast that rippled across the nearest dreadnought. Its shields flickered, and the second volley from Earth's fleet struck home. The massive Treveri ship groaned under the assault, fires erupting along its surface. Theric clenched his fist. 1 down. Kale frowned. 2 more are closing in. We won't withstand another full barrage. Alina's eyes flicked across the battlefield. We won't have to. She activated her comms. Alpha Strike Squadron, prepare for infiltration. From the rear of Earth's formation, a squadron of stealth corvettes peeled away, invisible to the naked eye. They slipped past the Dravari blockade, bypassing shield arrays, and targeted critical weak points along the hulls of the remaining dreadnoughts. Explosions erupted from within the Dravari ranks as one of the dreadnoughts fractured and drifted apart. Kale exhaled in astonishment. Your ships, they're ghosts. Alina smiled faintly. No, they're human. Turning the tide. The battle shifted. As more Dravari vessels fell, Republic reinforcements arrived. Vessels from across the galaxy, emboldened by humanity's offensive, surged into the fray. For the first time in recorded history, the Dravari Dominion's fleets faltered. As the final Dravari ships flooded into the depths of space, the battlefield fell silent, save for the crackling debris that drifted in their wake. Alina Voss stood at the edge of the bridge, watching as Earth's vessels regrouped. Kale approached quietly. I never doubted humanity's strength, but this was something else. Therak nodded in agreement. You've forced the Dravari to retreat. That's no small feat. Alina's gaze remained fixed on the void ahead. They'll return, she said calmly. This was a test, not the final battle. Kale's brow furrowed. Then what's next? Alina turned, her expression hard as steel. Next, we prepare, because when they come back, humanity won't just defend the Republic. Her voice lowered, sharp with conviction. We'll lead it. The legacy of Earth, word of Earth's triumph, spread across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the curious new addition to the Republic. They had become its vanguard, the first line of defense against threats the Republic had long ignored. The Dravari Dominion, licking its wounds, retreated deeper into uncharted space. But they, too, adapted. War was inevitable. But as the stars burned bright, one truth became clear. In the end, the galaxy had underestimated humanity. And that was their greatest mistake. The end.